Ghosting isn't an accident. It is a psychological weapon. Let me tell you something unsettling about modern love. We live in an era where connection is instant, but disconnection is absolute. You meet someone. The chemistry feels electric. The conversations flow until 2 a.m. You share secrets, hopes, laughter, perhaps even a future. And then, without a warning, without a fight, without a goodbye, silence. The text remains delivered. The stories are watched. But the person is gone. It is a disappearance so sudden, so jarring, that it leaves you questioning not just the relationship, but your own reality. And here is the question that haunts everyone who has been left in that digital void. Why? Why would someone capable of intimacy suddenly choose to become a phantom? It's easy to assume that people who ghost are simply cruel, narcissistic, or heartless. But that is not the full picture. Beneath the cruelty, there is a complex psychology at play, one that speaks volumes about fear, emotional immaturity, and the way technology has rewired our capacity for empathy. C. For the ghoster, silence is not malice. It is avoidance. It is the desperate need to bypass the discomfort of human confrontation. Because whether we admit it or not, we have built a dating culture that prioritizes ease over integrity. We treat people like products. And when a product no longer serves us, we don't explain why we're putting it back on the shelf. We just walk away. But those who vanish are often the ones who are struggling the most with their own internal landscape. They run without looking back. They detach before they can be engulfed. Psychologists have found something profound here. People who habitually ghost often score high on traits like conflict avoidance and attachment anxiety. They aren't trying to hurt you. They are trying to protect a fragile version of themselves. In their minds, they aren't villains. They are just people trying to escape a difficult conversation. But the impact on the other side is devastating. Because let's be honest, rejection is painful, but ambiguity is torture. When someone says, "I don't love you," it hurts, but it heals. It's a closed door. Ghosting is a door that is slammed shut, but not locked. It leaves you pacing the hallway, wondering if you should knock, or if the house was empty all along. And that brings us to the secret psychology of the unfinished loop. There is a concept in psychology called the Zeigarnik Effect. It states that our brains are hardwired to remember incomplete tasks far better than completed ones. When a relationship ends with a conversation, the brain files it away as finished. But when you are ghosted, the narrative has no ending. The brain stays stuck in a loop, replaying the last text, the last smile, searching for the glitch in the matrix. You become a detective in a crime where no body was found. And this is why ghosting feels like a weapon. It weaponizes your own hope against you. It forces you to carry the emotional load of two people. You have to ask the questions, and you have to invent the answers. But let's go deeper. Why has this become an epidemic now? Is our generation simply colder? No, but we are more overwhelmed. We are suffering from what sociologists call choice overload. On a dating app, there is always someone else. Another face, another match, another potential dopamine hit just a swipe away. This abundance creates a paradox. The more options we have, the less we value any single one of them. People become pixels. Relationships become low-stakes experiments. And when the human being behind the pixels starts demanding real emotional labor, the ghoster retreats to the safety of the screen. It is easier to disappear into the algorithm than to engage with the messy, uncomfortable reality of another person's feelings. This is not just bad manners. It is emotional burnout disguised as independence. Consider the avoidant attachment style. This is crucial to understanding the ghoster. For someone with an avoidant attachment, intimacy feels like a trap. When things get too real, too fast, their nervous system signals danger. They don't see your affection as a gift. they see it as a demand. And their primary defense mechanism is to shut down, to go dark. To them, ghosting feels like regaining control. It's a way to re-establish boundaries that they felt were being encroached upon. But here is the tragedy. In trying to avoid the pain of vulnerability, they inflict a deep trauma on the person who cared for them. They choose the safety of isolation over the risk of connection. And you, the person left reading old messages, you are left holding the bag. You start to internalize the silence. You think, if I was worth it, they would have stayed. If I was interesting enough, they would have replied. But that is the great lie of being ghosted. The silence says nothing about your worth. It says everything about their capacity, their inability to bridge the gap between feeling and communicating. We must also talk about cognitive dissonance. Most people want to see themselves as good. Breaking up with someone, hearing their voice crack, seeing their hurt, that threatens the self-image of being a nice person. So, the ghoster convinces themselves that fading away is actually kinder. They tell themselves, they'll get the hint. It's better than a fight. They prioritize their own immediate comfort over your long-term closure. It is a selfish act wrapped in the illusion of passivity. But there is a cost to this behavior. Not just for the victim, but for the ghoster too. When you repeatedly ghost people, you start to erode your own sense of integrity. You train your brain that people are disposable. You train yourself that commitments are optional. And over time, this creates a profound sense of hollowness. You become a tourist in other people's lives, never staying long enough to build anything real. You might feel free, but it is the freedom of a desert. Empty, vast, and incredibly lonely. For the person on the receiving end, the aftermath of ghosting mimics physical pain. Neuroimaging studies have shown that social rejection activates the same regions of the brain as physical injury. The silence literally hurts. It triggers a primal fear, the fear of ostracization. In our ancestral past, being ignored by the tribe meant death. Today, being ignored by someone you love feels like a small death. A death of possibility. A death of the future you were imagining. And because it happens on a screen, there is no funeral. No ritual to say goodbye. Just a blinking cursor and a feed that refreshes with other people's happiness. But this isn't just about individual psychology. It's about the architecture of our digital lives. Social media and dating apps have created a culture of low accountability. When you meet someone through a screen, they lack three-dimensionality. You don't see their hands shake. You don't smell their perfume. You don't see the light leave their eyes when you hurt them. This sensory deprivation makes it easier to dehumanize them. To the ghoster, you are not a person with a history and a heart. You are a notification, and notifications can be swiped away. There is also the factor of ambiguous loss. This is a term usually reserved for families of missing persons. But it applies here too. Without a body, without a breakup, you are suspended in grief. You vacillate between anger and worry. Did something happen to them? Did they lose their phone? And then you see them post a story of their brunch. And the worry turns to humiliation. The realization that you were worrying about someone who wasn't thinking about you at all. That shift is shattering. It breaks the fundamental contract of social interaction, mutual acknowledgement. But let's pivot for a moment. What happens when you stop fighting the ghost? What happens when you decide that the silence is not a question, but an answer? Because that is the hardest lesson to learn. No response is a response. It is a loud, clear, undeniable message. It says, I do not have the capacity to value you. And once you accept that, the power dynamic shifts back to you. You stop checking the phone. You stop watching the last seen status. You realize that their departure, however cruel, has cleared space. Imagine if they had stayed. Imagine dating someone who cannot communicate basic feelings. Imagine building a life with someone who flees at the first sign of friction. The ghosting was not a loss. It was a preview. It was a warning shot that saved you from a lifetime of emotional neglect. But the scars remain. This epidemic has created a generation that is afraid to hope. We enter new relationships with armor. We hold back. We don't text first. We wait to see if they will vanish. We play games not because we want to, but because we are terrified of being the one left standing in the quiet. We have coined terms for the nuances of this neglect: breadcrumbing, benching, haunting. It's an entire vocabulary of half-hearted connections. Breadcrumbing is when they give you just enough attention to keep you on the hook, but never enough to feed you. Haunting is when the ghost keeps watching your stories, lingering like a specter, reminding you they exist without ever speaking. These behaviors are all symptoms of the same disease: the desire for attention without intention. It is ego without empathy. But there is a rebellion happening here too. Some people are choosing to opt out of the game. They are demanding clarity. They are sending the scary texts. They are saying, "Hey, I haven't heard from you. I'm assuming this is over. I wish you the best." They are closing the loops themselves. They aren't waiting for the ghost to come back to life. They are burying it. This is an act of radical self-respect. It is refusing to let someone else's silence dictate your emotional state. And for those who have been ghosted, know this: the shame you feel does not belong to you. We often feel stupid for caring. We feel foolish for believing the promises that were made at 2 a.m. But caring is not a flaw. Vulnerability is not a mistake. The fact that you were willing to open up, to trust, to believe in connection despite the risks, that is a strength. It means your heart is still functioning in a world that is trying to turn it off. The ghoster is the one who is broken. They are the one operating from a place of deficit. They are missing out on the beauty of repair. In healthy relationships, rupture is inevitable. We misunderstand each other. We hurt each other. But then we repair. We talk. We fix it. And in that fixing, the bond grows stronger. The ghoster never gets to experience that depth. They stay on the surface, skiing over the waves, never diving deep enough to find the pearl. They are collectors of beginnings. They love the start, the rush, the spark, the fantasy. But they are terrified of the middle. The middle is where the work is. The middle is where the human shows up. And they simply aren't ready to be human. So, how do we heal from the weapon of silence? We stop treating it as a mystery to be solved. We treat it as data. When someone shows you who they are by disappearing, believe them the first time. Don't invent a tragedy where there is only apathy. Don't romanticize their absence. And most importantly, don't let their inability to communicate silence your own voice. Because the danger of being ghosted is that you start to become a ghost yourself. You start to withdraw. You start to withhold. You start to treat the next person with the same cold caution. And that is how the epidemic spreads. One broken heart breaking another, in a silent chain reaction. To break the cycle, you have to remain open. You have to stay soft in a hard world. It takes immense courage to say, "I was hurt, but I will not close." It takes bravery to say, "I deserve a goodbye, but I don't need one to move on." There is a psychological term called locus of control. When you obsess over why they left, you are giving them the control. Your happiness depends on their explanation. But when you decide that their silence is enough closure, you shift the locus back to yourself. You reclaim the narrative. You realize that your value was never tied to their perception of it. You are the protagonist of your life, not a background character in theirs. And maybe, just maybe, the silence is a gift. It is the universe's way of removing the wrong people from your path without you having to utter a word. It is a filtration system. The trash took itself out. It feels harsh to say that, but sometimes truth needs to be sharp to cut through the fog. Think about the time you are saving. The years you might have wasted trying to decipher a person who was never fluent in the language of emotion. They did you a favor. A painful, brutal favor, but a favor nonetheless. Now, look at the space around you, the quiet that they left. It doesn't have to be empty. It can be peaceful. It can be the place where you reconnect with the one person you've been neglecting while you were chasing a ghost. Yourself. Rebuild your standards. Decide that next time, bare minimum is not enough. Decide that communication is a non-negotiable. And if someone cannot offer you the basic dignity of a conversation, they do not get access to the sanctuary of your heart. It is really that simple. We complicate it because we are lonely. We complicate it because we want the fantasy to be real. But reality is better than fantasy because reality can be trusted. And the reality is, the right person does not disappear. The right person pauses, perhaps. They struggle, surely, but they do not vanish. They stay to finish the sentence. So let the ghosts haunt the internet. Let them scroll and swipe in their endless loop of avoidance. You have something more important to do. You have a real life to live, filled with real conversations, awkward moments, difficult truths, and beautiful, undeniable presence. Don't let the silence make you doubt your song. Keep singing it. The ones who are meant to hear it will listen. And they will never leave you wondering if the music stopped. Because for them, the music is just beginning. Understand this finally. Ghosting is the modern tragedy of unexpressed humanity. It is a failure of courage, but your response to it can be your greatest triumph. When you stop chasing the ghost, you start catching yourself. And that is the only connection that is truly guaranteed to last. The one with the person in the mirror, the one who stayed, the one who is still here. You.